Thank you all for being here. Today we'll be discussing the topic Tech Integrations for Lawyers 101, a Holistic Approach. My name is Brittany Hernandez, and I'm a lawyer licensed in California and the head of legal innovation at Gavel. Gavel is a document automation platform for lawyers that serves as the automation infrastructure for the modern scalable law practice. I'm joined today by Martin Kravchenko. Martin is the co-founder and CTO at Automation for Lawyers, an automation consulting agency for boutique law firms. Martin comes from the high-tech startup world and earned his stripes by helping scale the #1 rated law firm on Trustpilot from 5 to 25 plus staff members, where he implemented state-of-the-art tech solutions. For the past 3 years, Automation for Lawyers has helped firms of 3 to about 30 staff eliminate repeated work, fix their inefficient tech, and free their owners' time to focus on growth rather than fighting fires. They achieve this with automated workflows with Make and Zapier, app integrations connecting disjointed systems, and tool implementations helping firms use tech to do the heavy lifting rather than it being a burden. Martin is a big fan of the Make automation platform and is now helping bring more apps onto the platform as a way of giving back to the legal tech community, including with a brand new Gavel app, which he'll be showing you today. So our agenda for today is I will be speaking first and share how a holistic approach to creating systems can create harmony between the tech platforms that we use. Martin will then cover how building custom automations within that context can make these powerful systems work with the way that you work while streamlining out any inefficiencies. We'll leave about 10 minutes at the end for questions, so feel free to post your questions in the chat as you think of them, and we'll pick them up during that portion of the call. So let's start this conversation around the importance of a holistic approach to creating systems and how it can create harmony between the tech platforms that we use. When we automate, we really want to think holistically about not only our internal processes, but about our new client journey or our client journey. So for example, I have here the Gavel 7, where we're talking about lots of different pieces of the puzzle when it comes to thinking about automation for our practices. We want to start with this idea of what are we optimizing for, and think a lot about not only our internal process, but our client's process. What are the different touch points that happen along the way that could be automated for our client so that they're not entering repetitive information and that we on the internal process are not repeating anything that should be repurposed from data we already have. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of that. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about data repurposing and how you can use Gavel's native integrations with Clio, Stripe, and DocuSign to make a really seamless process when you're going through and automating your practice. So I'll talk for about 10 minutes on these topics, and then I'm going to let Martin take the rest of the time so that he can really show you how he's created different custom apps and integrations using Make and the new one that he just made for us recently, actually, just launched. So let's talk first about this idea of how can we think about the user's journey. So let's first look at what it is to have a Gavel account and what is Gavel. So this is essentially a tool that you can use to automate your legal documents. And it also allows you to create client-facing workflows where we're able to have the client enter some of the information, and then we can use that to deliver the services to them. So let's say, for example, that you are an expert in US veteran law, and you've created a Gavel workflow where a workflow is a set of questions and answers that have different conditional logic attached to them based on the inputs. So people are only answering the questions that are actually relevant to them and their situation. So I'll show you what that looks like in the context of this example where we have a workflow embedded into a blog post about a particular type of grant to help a new client or potential client understand whether they may or may not be eligible to get up to $117,000 to adapt their home to accommodate for their service-connected disability. Now, a couple of things are happening at the same time that we can point out from a holistic standpoint. We're going to be thinking about the fact that, one, this is something that is interacting with our website builder. So in my case, I'm using a tool called Softer. So we want to understand how a Gavel workflow can be embedded into our websites, for example. And we can see here that somebody would be able to directly interact with this workflow that we've built using Gavel. And what's happening is we're using this as a couple of different things. One, as a lead magnet. So something that can bring our client from a Google search or a Bing search. They're looking for a keyword related to this particular topic. And when they come to our website over our competitor's website, we want to be able to deliver value very quickly with something like this, where we only ask them a few questions and then we can give them an answer about whether they may or may not be eligible for this type of grant. Then we can invite them to work with us and invite them to have a consultation and go from there. Secondly, what's happening is that we're actually able to qualify this lead so that we're only inviting people to work with us who answered in a way that makes it to where they're likely eligible and we can apply for this grant for them. The third thing is that we're collecting information and data that is going into our Gavel data manager that we can then in the future repurpose in multiple different ways. So let's take a quick look at what this would look like. In this example, this is the 3 different hinges or conditions that are necessary to make it to where somebody might be eligible for this type of grant are that they need to have one of the following service-connected disabilities, and they need to be using the grant money to buy, build, or change their permanent home, and they need to own or will own the home. So if someone doesn't meet any of those 3 conditions, then they're likely not eligible. So we want to knock people out of this workflow as soon as possible. So if they say none of the above, in that they do not meet the first condition, then they're going to skip over a page about home information because we only want to have the client answer relevant information for their particular matter. And we want to filter out people who are likely not eligible. Then they see a message that says, based on your answers, you may not be eligible for these reasons because you don't have one of these service-connected disabilities. Now, let's say, for example, that they do have one and we want to learn more about their situation. We can see here this instance of page logic where now they're getting asked the other 2 questions or other conditions that must be met in order for them to qualify. Will you be using the grant money to buy, build, or change your permanent home? And do you own or will you own the home? If they say no, that's an instance of question logic where it doesn't matter if they own or will own their home if they say no, because this condition must also be met. So if they say continue and continue, they're still going to see that they're likely not eligible, but in this case, they're going to be for a different reason. Now we don't see those bullet points anymore, but we still say you may not be eligible. You need to be using the grant money for these reasons. Finally, if somebody does meet all 3 of the necessary conditions, then they're going to see the home information page. They're going to see a different message, right? They're going to see something that says, congratulations, you're likely eligible for this. We'd love to meet with you, book a consultation with us. So based on your answers, you may be eligible. We'd love to meet with you. Here's your initial consultation. So as you can see, the first 2 things that are happening is one, they are getting enticed to come to our website over a competitor because they're given an answer very quickly. And then secondly, they are getting qualified as a lead for us on the back end so that we can only work with the people who would actually be eligible, who could actually work with us on this particular matter. And also we're getting the data collected about the people who have filled this out. So I can see all of those times that this was run in those examples. And what I can do now is take that information and repurpose that and push it into a next workflow. In this case, let's say we've met with them and we have determined that we are able to work with them. So we want to engage them as a client. Then what we'll be able to do is repurpose the information we collected and push it through into a limited scope engagement agreement in this example, because we're just doing one piece of this particular matter. And then we'd only have to answer the questions that we don't already have the answers for from what their first workflow that they completed was. So you can see how we're moving information from one place to another in a very holistic, thought out way and strategic way, so that from the initial point of data collection, we have a purpose in a very strategic way of asking them questions that's conditioned based on the answers that come before. And we're collecting that data in a way that allows us to reuse it in other workflows. So we can see here that all of that information has pushed through without us having to type anything because we've already had a lot of that information collected. So now what we can do is submit this for a DocuSign signature, where that's going to automatically send the email over to the client to sign that first. So it's this very closed loop of information that flows from one place to another, from one workflow to another in a very holistic, thought out way. Now, what you see is that we have this DocuSign integration, but we also have a native Clio integration. So sometimes people will store the information in another data source. So it's, let's say you could actually have everything just be done from Gavel, as you saw first. But if you already have information living somewhere else, such as in a different system like Clio or Leadly or HubSpot or, any different, there's like Practice Panther in my case. I mean, there's so many different places that you could have information stored, which actually Martin will go into in a little bit more depth. I'm just going to quickly show you what it would look like if you had the information stored in Clio. So all you would need to do to connect Clio to Gavel is go under integrations and then just sign into your account where it says Clio Manage. Same thing for DocuSign. You would just link your account here. And then also we have an integration with Stripe. So what we can do is go through the process of, let's say we're preparing a power of attorney for our client. Then all we would need to do is look for our client's name and then continue. And all of the information about them is getting pulled through automatically from this matter. So I can see her information is actually, we don't have to enter the client's information because it's already getting pulled. But we can also see that other people's information that's connected to this particular matter is also getting pulled through. So in this case, we've designated that this person is the agent, Bella Sofia Lopez, and we have her address getting pulled through automatically here and here for her name and address. And like I said, we only need to answer the rest of the questions that we don't have stored somewhere else. So in this case, the powers that we want the agent to have, and then whether we want this power of attorney to continue if she becomes incapacitated, and whether we want to add any special instructions. And actually what's happening on the back end of this document is quite a lot of logic, because there are a lot of decisions that we've made already, particularly whether there's a single agent or more than one. Because if there was more than one, we'd see an S here after agent and here after the Y in attorneys. We would see all of the multiple agents information here. There's a lot of logic happening here where it's saying if all of these were selected, we'd only see one initial here and none here. And then there's also special instructions, conditions around this. And a whole section has been hidden here because of the fact that we don't have multiple agents, where the section would say, how do you want these agents to behave or act jointly or separately? So we're able to repurpose information in our legal practice management software, such as Clio. We can repurpose the information that we collect through the data manager, and we can connect through DocuSign as well. So we have lots of different ways that we can collect data and repurpose data once we understand how we want to use it. Now, my time's almost up, so I'm just going to quickly show you a couple of examples of different companies and lawyers who have been using Gavel to create these client-facing legal products. But you can see that you can also use Gavel 100% internally as well. And all of these different integrations and all of these different concepts of how can we use different pieces of tech in harmony together, for all the way from our website to our document automation solution, to our legal practice management software, to our booking calendars. All of these different pieces can talk to each other in a very harmonized way. And so what we've seen here with all of these different companies, they're started by lawyers who saw the potential of being able to use this kind of tool at its full potential to automate different tools and products that they can offer to the public that will be an automated revenue stream for them outside of the billable hour. So we have, for example, Counsel Your Docs, where they have a particular shareholder agreement that they've automated. And this will demonstrate that Stripe integration where somebody will be able to click on the bundle where a bundle is a stack of multiple workflows in a single link. And you're able to actually just say buy now, and then it's going to take you straight to this Stripe page where somebody can pay for this workflow, in this case, $695, and then they can start the workflow right away, complete that, and have their documents generated. So it's really cool to see how, in this case as well, we have three different pieces at play. The software that they've used to create the website, the software they're using with Gavel to create the workflows, and then the Stripe integration to collect the payments. So I'll go ahead and turn the time now back over to Martin.
Fantastic. So first of all, let's talk about these custom solutions. And before going into the process of developing these custom solutions, we really need to understand why do we need them in the first place. And so the primary reason for that is that every law firm is different, right? You may be using already a lot of these tools, Clio Manage for case management, Gavel for workflow automation, etc. But what a lot of times we see with the clients that we work with is that their data is scattered, their tools are scattered, they're not optimizing their use of tools, or their tools don't talk with each other in the best manner possible, either because the integration is simply not there, or the integration is limited and doesn't adapt to their specific workflow. Ultimately, what we want to achieve is going from very much on the left, right, where it's a bit of a scramble, you're not really sure the case status at each point, you're not really sure who is doing what, to a streamlined workflow enabled by automations, and where data seamlessly syncs in all the different systems that you're using. And so my objective during the next few minutes will be to explain to you the three-step process that we use with our clients to understand what needs to be implemented on the tech side and how do we then make those decisions. And then after that, show you a few demos of automations that can be built on top of Gavel together with the Make.com automation platform that has been recently, for which the integration has been recently released. And so in terms of the three-step process, really it's understanding the customer journey, understanding what steps need to happen for your clients to go through from discovering your firm to paying, to leaving a review and completing the case, then choosing the right tools for the job, and then finally implementation. So first of all, understanding the customer journey. Before we jump into choosing the tools that we want to use for the job, for example, I see a lot of people asking in Facebook groups, so like, hey, what is better, Locus or Lawmatics? Okay, which case management platform is the best? And the thing is, as you may as well know, obviously working in the legal industry, if a client comes up to you, a potential lead comes up to you and says, like, hey, like which option is better, A or B? A lot of time the answer is it depends. And so really the same happens here. To understand what you truly need is you need to make sure first that you understand your process, right? And the process that both your customer and your staff members go through to deliver the case. And so how this looks like is essentially a process map. You want to diagram out the full customer journey. So for example, on the lead acquisition side of things, it could be outlining all the different lead sources that the clients, my clients may be coming from, SEO, Facebook content, Google Ads, etc. How do they then contact you, right? So for example, they land on the website, then they click, schedule consultation, they're taken to a Calendly page where they can choose the desired service, etc., etc., etc. But then also doing the same on the service delivery, right? So what needs to happen for the case to be completed? For example, for onboarding, right? A new case is opened, a paralegal needs to extract the information from an email and, for example, open a matter. In my case, they need to set up a folder in Google Drive. They need to set up the required task to be completed in my case. And then, for example, they need to request more information from the client, right? As you can see, this process can become quite granular. And obviously here, what you would also need to make sure that your business processes that you have, right? Not even talking about tech, your business processes are defined as a firm. But we feel that that's a very useful first step to understand the capabilities and the needs that you would have when evaluating a new solution, right? Because otherwise, if you don't know what you need, you won't be able to make the right decision. The next step will be choosing the right tools. And really here we think of it in kind of a level of hierarchy of tools that we can be stacking on top of each other to make sure that they adapt to your exact needs as a firm. And here really there are the 4 levels. The base level is your CRM and your case management systems, right? That can be, for example, Clio Grow and Clio Manage, Lawmatics, Zoho, Airtable, etc. Obviously, some of them are more flexible from the get-go, and so already allow you to build in a bit more flexibility, such as, for example, Airtable and Zoho, while others are a bit more opinionated, let's say, in the way they do things. For example, Clio Manage. Now, that doesn't mean that one is better than the other. If your workflow adapts quite nicely to the way that Clio Manage works, fantastic. That means less complexity for you and less technical need that you'll have in terms of updating the system. Now, even if you're working with a more, let's say, limited system, there are still a lot of options for those 3 levels above that we can stack on top of. So, for example, the second one would be specialized software. This can be scheduling solutions, such as, for example, Calendly, which a lot of times provide more flexible options in terms of how you can schedule events compared to the way that you would get, for example, directly from Lomatics. Things, obviously, tools like Gavel, right, for document automation and for more flexible intake forms. And you may have a Clio Grow intake form, but then it doesn't really allow for that same level of flexibility, conditional logic that you would expect from Gavel. And obviously, for example, any other tools that you use, such as, QuickBooks for accounting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So even with just these 2 levels, you can achieve quite a lot, because a lot of time what happens is, well, the specialized software already have integrations with the tools you are using for your CRM and case management system, right? Just as Brittany explained right now, Gavel integrates with Clio Manage, so you can be pulling information from one system to another. And here you don't need any crazy technical setups. The step after that, right, if you want to automate more, or for example, if some of these integrations are either non-existent in between the tools that you're using, which can have, for example, happen with especially these more generic systems such as Zoho and Airtable. A lot of times they won't have integrations with legal specific tools, simply because there are no development resource to build out all of those development integrations on either side, really. That's where automation and data integration platforms come into play. So the 2 biggest players here are Make.com and Zapier. Essentially, what these platforms allow you to do is to say, okay, when one event happens in software, let's say a new matter is opened in Clio Manage, take certain set of actions in other software. So, for example, generate a document through Gavel, and upload it back to the matter in Clio Manage. In terms of the flexibility they can build there, it is really much more flexible than we expect out of the get-go in terms of automation in any of these platforms, simply because you then get the flexibility of creating custom objects and enable conditional logic that wouldn't be available in any of the softwares. Apart from Make and Zapier, which are more geared toward automation, there are also specific software solutions such as Skyvia, for example, that can be pulling data from one system to another for like on a more continuous basis, for example, for reporting, right? So that if, for example, you're not happy with the reports that Zoho or Clio or Airtable provides to you, you can pull data out of the system using those tools, those data integration platforms. You can pull information out of those tools, upload it to a more custom solution such as Google BigQuery, for example, and then enable a more custom dashboards and Looker Studio, Power BI, et cetera, et cetera. So really, you can go quite crazy with all of these tools. Now, the ultimate level, the pinnacle of the flexibility they can get is on custom code and app builders, right? So, for example, an app builder would be a platform such as a software that Brittany just mentioned for building out a custom client portal for your clients. And obviously, custom code solutions is directly working with code. A lot of times, Make and Zapier are simpler to build in because they already have a lot of predefined integrations and predefined functions in a no-code or low-code way, which means that faster to develop in less chance of error. Custom code is the ultimate flexibility. And so what happens is, obviously, as you go up the hierarchy, the flexibility, but then also at the same time, the technical complexity of the solution increases. And so whenever somebody asks, like, which, is low-code or Lomatics better, the thing is, it's not only low-code or Lomatics, it's also how do we integrate all of these other tools, right? If you're already using one software, instead of doing the whole migration, which is a painful process, can we add another tool on top that integrates nicely with it, either natively or through one of these automation platforms, to enable the functionality without fully changing up the system and the way that your stuff works. So let me give you an example, right? For example, we want to send an engagement letter automatically as soon as a new matter is open in Clio Manage. Right? We go to Clio and we say, hey, honestly, the Clio Manage template engine is a bit too basic, right? We, for example, cannot add that much, conditional logic in there, like formatting options are quite limited. So let's use Gavel, right? You build out the workflow in Gavel, you say, okay, that works very nicely. The issue then is I can create the document with Gavel, but I need to manually trigger it, right? I need to manually, a staff member needs to go into the form, right? Even if there is that Clio Manage integration, right? And manually select the matter and then proceed to creating those documents and uploading them back to Clio. That's where the third level comes in with the make.com automation platform, where we can generate the document with Gavel upon a change of stage in Clio Manage, all done automatically and all done in the background, which obviously means less time spent from your team on doing these tasks, and obviously high accuracy because all of those conditions are already predefined. Actually, this example I will show as well a demo of how that looks like in just a few minutes. The second example would be a bit more advanced. So, for example, auto-saving notes. The other day I posted in a Facebook group like, hey, Clio Manage users, what is your biggest pain point? Some people said like Clio doesn't auto-save notes, right? So if you, for example, have been typing out like big court hearing notes, you refresh the page and it disappears. So here, for example, there would be limited options even with automation platforms to do so. But we can build a custom Chrome extension that auto-save notes, which I'll actually show you in just a second. A fun fact, it was also built with Claude, competitive ChatGPT. So you don't even need to be a super expert coder to build something like this now with all of this Gen AI solutions available on the market. So let me actually show you how this works. So if I open up a matter over here and I start typing something, court note, and then if for some reason, the browser closes, your computer restarts, whatever, if you refresh the page and then try to create a new note, it's gone, right? Obviously not a big issue if it's a small note, but if it's something larger, then it can be quite a time drain. So let me show you this Chrome extension that again was built probably in like 8 hours with Claude. If we now create a new note over here, court note, and we now refresh, the extension automatically saves that as soon as you're making any changes. And so now if we reopen the note, as you can see, the information is back there, and we can actually see it in a very nice user interface as well over here, right? I want to go into details of how this is integrated because it's too complex for this, but I just want to explain the different possibilities that there are for you to have a better idea of the landscape and what's possible. Let's now hop in and talk about another 2 demos built with the new make.com Gavel integration. The first demo will be for an estate planning workflow, covering the feature of Gavel that essentially allows you to collect information from your customer. And then the second demo would be sending that automated engagement letter, i.e. using Gavel as more of a document automation platform, the example that I already mentioned previously. So for the first one, estate planning intake form, quite simple form. We just have 2 pages over here. The first is the client's email address. And then the second page, we have a repeating item of related parties. And so in here, what the user is able to define is the full name of the person and then the relationship that they have, right? So for example, like spouse, child, grandchild, or other. The other system that we're connecting Gavel to is actually Airtable. Airtable is essentially what I call Excel on steroids. It's a database that you can define. You can obviously enter information such as in Google Sheets. The cool thing is then you can connect different objects together, right? So for example, the related parties can be connected to matters, and then any of the financial assets that we're connecting from those related parties can be connected to the actual related party. It also provides you a lot more ways of visualizing the data, which wouldn't be available in normal Google Sheets, and a lot of flexibility ultimately. So the first thing that you'll need is the client email. So we already have this client over here, Giorgio. So let's just copy their email. Comment here in the client email address, click continue. We'll define all the related parties that they have. So for example, let's say Maria, Maria will be our spouse. Then Lorenzo, for example, as our child. Let's click continue. After that, they will have a second level nested repeating item. Actually, I'm not 100% sure why it wasn't showing up on Gavel, but the second level repeating item, which essentially for each one of those related parties, it will ask for their assets, right? Which again, there can be multiple. So for example, let's say Maria has a bank account with a monetary value of 120,000. And for example, also have the car, let's say 25,000. And click continue. We can review all the information we entered. And then it will pass on to Lorenzo and ask, okay, what are Lorenzo's assets? So let's imagine Lorenzo has a boat, and that boat is worth 150,000, quite an expensive boat. Click continue. Again, I can review all the information. We'll get then the full review over here. And as soon as we submit this information, the automation will get triggered. Let me show you that automation now briefly. I'll go through step by step how to set it up after I show the demo. Now I'll just activate it and make sure that it runs whenever we submit the workflow. All right, let's click continue. Continue again. Okay, it says here are your documents. We are not really generating any documents here, so that is irrelevant. The important thing is that that information is stored in the database, and this automation has successfully run. So let's go back to Airtable and see, as you can see over here, the related parties have been added. If you go into the related parties section, we'll be able to see that we got their names. We got the right relationships chosen from a dropdown. They have all been linked to the right matter, and we have their financial assets displayed over here. You now go to the financial assets. We're able to see line by line, the description, the monetary value, who owns that asset, and the matter that they're related to. The cool thing again about Airtable is that it then provides you as well a lot of options in terms of how you want to visualize the data. For example, we can enable this grid view, which will then group the financial assets by the related party, right? And so we can then very easily see based on the general group of the matter and then subgroups of each related party, we can see the sum of their assets and the sum of the assets that we have under the full matter. Let me now actually walk you through how this automation is set up. The initial trigger is what's called a webhook. Webhook essentially URL, a server URL provided by Make, which listens for any events or any form submissions provided by Gavel. So whenever I add a new webhook over here, I will get this link, which I can copy to clipboard. And if I go then into the form setup, in settings on Gavel, integrations, I then create a new webhook over here and define that URL. You can also say if you want to include documents or not. It doesn't really matter for this example because obviously there are no documents. So as soon as a form is submitted, it will send information to this webhook. It will look something like this. It will have any files, if there are any. And then in the data, we have the information about all of the fields. For example, the client's email. In the related party, we have the two parties, so Maria and Lorenzo. We have their full name and the relationship. And then we have under them a nested repeating item, financial assets, again, with the description and the monetary value. And so we get all of that information. The next step that we do is we actually try to find that client inside of our Airtable database. There's already a pre-built action over here. You don't really need to know how to code for building this workflow. Again, it's all no code. We are choosing we're choosing the base where we want to be looking it up. We're choosing the table of clients. And then the most important thing is that then we're just using a formula, i.e. saying, if the email is equal to whatever we get from the data in terms of the client email field, right? If information will be found, we'll get, first of all the information about the client. Most importantly, we'll get this record ID, which is a unique identifier of that client inside of our database in Airtable. We then have a filter, which will just check that that ID actually exists, i.e. that client has been found. And the cool thing about Make, it makes very easy for you to work with this nested items, with repeating items, compared, at least in my experience, to, for example, Zapier. we can enable this block over here, iterate related parties, and pass to it the list of related parties that we got from our webhook. And so what will happen is for each one of those items, all of the modules that come after it will be executed once for each related party. So we are looping essentially through these related parties. It splits the data essentially into those bundles, what they call them, make.com. And then for each one, again, we have the full name, we have the relationship, and then we have information about all of their financial assets. After that, we are creating the related party in its separate table, related parties. We are passing the information about the full name, about the relationship, which is actually a drop-down field. But considering that we have set up the drop-down, i.e. the single select, the same way in Gavel and in Airtable, we can just pass it directly and we'll choose the right option out of these. And then for the relation to the clients, we are adding the ID of the client record that we have found previously in step 2 over here. Creating the related party. And then for the nested, second level nested item, i.e. the assets, we are then iterating through the assets of each related party, right? So for example, if we have 2 related parties over here, this created related party action will be executed just 2 times. And then all the other modules after this, after we iterate the financial assets, will be executed once for each financial assets of each related party. So in a similar manner as before, we are iterating over the financial assets and then creating that as separate record, again, in Airtable. We are putting the description, the monetary value, and then the relation to now the related party over here. Right? So after that, after running it, we get something like this, all related parties linked to the correct person, and then all these people linked correctly to the matter. All right. That was use case number 1. By the way, after this webinar, we'll work with Brittany to actually provide you the templates to those automations. So you can, what they call blueprints in make.com, so you can easily set it up and play around with it in your system. Let's now look at the second use case, which is generating an engagement letter as soon as a new matter is opened in Clio. So for that, we have a separate workflow. It doesn't have any repeating items over here, so it's more simple in that regard. We're just asking for a few some basic information: client's name, street address, client city, zip code, and then some question about the actual agreement, right? So what is the agreement date? What are the client's legal services that will be provided to them? And what is the initial deposit or trust request amount? Now, we have defined as well a docx template in relation as well to this workflow over here. And as you can see, I have highlighted all the custom fields. So populating the client name, formatting and populating the agreement date, the description of the services, the deposit as well properly formatted, and then finally at the end as well, the client address. So the cool thing about this automation is that we won't have to manually trigger it. It will be executed automatically as soon as we update a field in Clio Manage. For that, I have a separate matter over here. I have defined a few custom fields. The first one being the stage, right, of that matter, for example, like initial console, then onboarding, service delivery, etc. If you are using, if you have the top subscription plan in Clio Manage, you actually have access to kind of like a native stage function with the Kanban board. Otherwise, a workaround that you can do is a custom field over here. And then I have also added a few other fields over here for the engagement letter specifically, right? So firstly, we have the services description, let's say production of an operating agreement and standard NDA, the initial deposit amount as well that can be specified directly from the Clio Manage interface. And then this more of a system field, it will change to yes as soon as the engagement letter has been generated and uploaded to the Clio Manage matter. Now, the rest of the information, right, for example, the client address and the matter number are all taken directly from the contact, for example, related to this. As you can see, we have the address, right? And obviously, any information about the matter can also be taken from here as well. Here's how the automation will look like. We won't have time to go into detail of all of these actions over here, but essentially the general flow is whenever a new matter is updated, it will trigger this automation. We then get the information about the matter, We are doing some formatting. We get the information about the contact. We create a session with the data in Gavel using our workflow that we have just shown. And then after that, we are downloading the documents, uploading them to ClearManage so that they appear in this documents tab over here. So you can see now it's empty. And then updating the matter itself to notify that the document has been generated. So let's run this once, and I'll make a change in our ClearManage matter. Obviously, here as well, you'll be able to modify this, this field over here. Let's change our stage to onboarding and click Save Matter. Right, so the matter has been edited, and sometimes it can take a few seconds for it to populate, sometimes even a few minutes. While we wait for that, let me also explain to you the other ways that you can trigger this automations from ClearManage. So one is obviously this automated way on the background, right? So listening, for example, for ClearManage for updates on a specific matter or contact. Another thing that very few people know about is actually this more actions over tab over here. Again, using the API, using make.com, you can enable this custom actions, which will enable you to trigger automations to, for example, even go to like a separate form that is already pre-filled and you can start working from, again, by enabling the section over here, for example, generate engagement letter. As you can see, the automation has been executed. It's running now. And if we go now to the Documents tab, you'll see that we now have the PDF and we have the docx. If we open up the PDF, let's see how it looks like. We'll see that we got the information about the client. We got the current date, 25th of September, correctly formatted. We got this production of an operating agreement and a standard NDA, custom field. We got the deposit amount and all the client information as well, where here has been pulled through. Right now, you could go even a step beyond that and automatically sign it for sign-in. That's what we would usually do, unless you need to make any changes to those documents. So as soon as you change the stage in ClearManage or whatever other system, all of those things happen automatically and you don't need to worry about it. If you go back as well and refresh the screen, we'll see that the engagement letter generated field has also been updated to yes, meaning that as well, we can then filter for that field in our automation to make sure it doesn't trigger multiple times if the matter is updated again. So I think that's really it. I think we can open up the floor to the Q&A. Again, the templates for both automations will provide after this webinar.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Martin. That was awesome. We actually do have a question in the chat from Rob. He was just saying, this is great. And he is familiar with, these types of different integrations and would just ask if we had a little bit of time to spend on how others are building and selling legal products online. So I'd love to address that quickly here, where I can give you some examples of a couple of different people who are doing a couple different things from a billing standpoint of how they're collecting the different payments and what their offers are. So I'll show you a couple of different ways that people are structuring the pricing models and what they're selling in different practice areas. So one example is Hello Divorce. So they focus on obviously family law and helping people at different stages of their divorce. So the way that they do it is they help people filter by jurisdiction. They filter by what stage they are within their process. So if they're ready for a divorce or considering one, and then based on the jurisdiction and the stage, they offer different packages at different tiers. So you can see a DIY plan here for $400 with a one-time payment. And what's included here are Gavel workflows that allow them to complete their forms in just a few minutes. And then if they want a little bit more help, like a dedicated specialist, they can pay a little bit more, but offer different payment plans. And the same forms would be included, but now they're able to have a dedicated specialist. They get their forms checked for accuracy. They will have Hello Divorce actually file and serve for you and deal with the court. So you can see how they've unbundled this service in different ways and offered different pricing tiers to say, if you want to do this process yourself and save a little bit of money, you can do the forms on your own here for $400. But if you want lots of help, such as an entire mediation plan, then you can pay $3,800. Another good example is DOS docs. So they focus on things like business purpose loan documents, brokers, investor packages, all of these different types of documents. And you can see the distinguishing factor here is the way that these different Gavel workflows are packaged and offered to the consumer. In the first example with Hello Divorce, they were offered in sort of a tiered based system. So from a lower tier to a higher tier, getting more or less depending on what you want. And then in this example of DOS docs, you're getting a marketplace style where there are lots of different documents that you could get at different pricing tiers, such as $399, $199, $499, $599. So you can kind of see how there's some differences there as well. Counsel your docs, and the next one, My Trustee. These are really good examples as well of starting with a single product instead of multiple products. If you are trying to offer something to the market initially, and you just want to, you don't want to spend all of the time automating every single form in this process, maybe starting with a single form or process first and testing that in the market to see who your market is. And then from there, kind of building it out to be more robust. So in this case, we have Counsel Your Docs focusing on shareholder agreements, and they offer a single product, which is for a very specific audience. So this would be for, businesses based in Ontario, with 5 or less shareholders or whatever the criteria is. I saw a couple of things in the chat, so let me just double check. So let's see. The unauthorized practice of law concerns, that's a great question, Rob. I'll show that example in just a second. And then why did Martin choose Make over Zapier? Great question, Bruce. So I'll let Martin answer that after I just show a couple more examples. But Rob just mentioned Make is cheaper and way better from a user experience and design. So one question that you mentioned, Rob, was around like the unauthorized practice of law piece around when you're offering documents to like for sale. So, that's the same kind of issues that people would have to think about if they're doing like LegalZoom or, all these big players who have been around for many years. So the way that DOS Docs does this, for example, is by separating out their law firm from the DOS docs. So it's a separate entity and a separate process. And the DOS docs company licenses the documents from the law firm DOS Law. They've also disclaimed saying here that we're proud to say that the documents generated by this website are licensed from DOS Law. I'm looking down here on the bottom left. I would believe they are the best. However, DOS Law LLP does not prepare the actual documents users create on this website. Use of this website does not establish an attorney-client relationship with the law firm. A user's relationship is solely with DOS Doc, a non-attorney. Nothing on this website should be construed as legal advice. Final documents generated on this website should be carefully reviewed by each user and its legal counsel before using. And then you also have terms of use and a privacy policy there as well, so that you can kind of very directly address like what the relationship is, whether there's an attorney-client relationship, whether any lawyer is like looking at these documents and what that would look like. So I think a lot of different people are, just claiming it or just kind of doing it based on, being able to kind of differentiate between the firm itself and the separate legal entity, which provides templates that should be reviewed by a lawyer. And actually what I'm sorry, I'm not Bruce, what Dennis Doss has said about this is that it actually generally also serves as a lead generation for the firm. So people will come and, generate the first set of documents, and then they will ask DOS Law to review the generated document. So you can kind of actually get that one customer to pay twice in a way, because they've saved a little bit of money on the front end, maybe generating the document, but then they've also still worked with you as a firm. Martin, did you want to go a little bit into why you choose Make over Zapier?
Yeah. I mean, both are great platforms. With Make, really the main advantages are, first of all, the flexibility of the automation you can actually build. It's cheaper. It can be actually up to 10 times cheaper compared to Zapier in certain circumstances. And ultimately, well, like as Rob mentioned, the UX and the how fast you can develop automation in it is superior to Zapier. Now, it does have certain disadvantages. The main disadvantage being that there are less integrations or connectors already built out in Make.com with the other platforms. So, for example, Gavel, ClearManage, etc. That's why as well we have decided to bring Gavel on board onto the Make.com platform and to as well make it available. That doesn't mean that it can't integrate into those other solutions that are not already available natively. It just means that that process will be a bit more complicated, but it's still doable. So for most of our builds, we do use Make over Zapier.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you so much for clarifying that as well. Yeah, if there are any more questions, you're welcome to also just unmute and let us know. I did quickly want to just highlight a couple more since we have a little bit more time from the legal product side. So I know Rob had to go, but I can send him, I'll send everyone the recording so that you can kind of see from here. The one around Counsel Docs and My Trusty, as I mentioned, is sometimes when you're starting, you don't want to start with something really, really big. So you want to start with something very like narrow. So for example, with My Trusty, they focus specifically on offering a way for someone to generate a guardianship. So it's just a very, very specific one. And they started at a price tier that is affordable for that demographic. So new parents maybe don't have a lot of extra money because they're spending more on their new child. And so offering that at $89 and really making that personalized for based on like, for example, Allie's story. And after she had her child, she just felt like she wanted to be able to offer something that somebody could they could be breastfeeding and then also sort of like fill out this on their phone, and it wouldn't cost them too much money, but it would protect their new child. So you can really start with something from your own personal experience, as well as starting with one specific thing at a price tier that's a little bit lower, so you can focus on scaling that. Other ones as well are like Jury Doc, which is another one where you could either do a subscription model or a marketplace style. And then Endus.store is an estate planning firm that has a separate store where they offer things like estate plans, wills, guardianships, and financial and medical packages, financial power of attorney, HIPAA authorizations, healthcare directives, and so on. So just a couple more examples of how people are using tools like Gavel to automate their practices, but also offer legal products as well. So it's really exciting to see. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up if there are no more questions, which I don't see more in the chat. But thank you for those of you that did ask some questions around, why you would use one over the other, or about creating legal products and so on. So thank you so much to Martin for being here and for doing so much preparation to make sure that we're able to really understand how to use integrations in our practices, and also to think about how we can holistically think not only about our internal processes, but also our business processes, which you mentioned as well. And then from my side, to just really focus on how can these systems talk to each other. And then from Martin's perspective, how to trigger by just doing one action and having 10 things happen along the way. So thank you so much to everyone for being here, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.